Welcome to part 2 of my series of why I love E.T. for the Atari 2600. Last time I compared and contrasted E.T. with a lot of its contemporary games, some of the most popular Atari games of all time, to give those of you who never had a chance to play Atari games, or at the very least weren't alive in that decade, just a general feel for what video games and gaming was like back then. Now, first of all, E.T. is a revolutionary game because it is one of the few Atari games that had an intro screen. This was probably the first video game I ever saw with a title screen. This is one of the few Atari games that actually had one. Few Atari 2600 games actually had a title screen, believe it or not, and even fewer actually had a game ending. In fact, out of all the Atari games I have ever played, and keep in mind I've played a lot, E.T. is the only one that actually has a game ending. Now I've found the call ship zone, I've activated the timer. All I need to do is, there it is, find the ship landing pad, wait to get picked up, and I will have won the game, as long as the FBI agent doesn't come. Good, he didn't. Yes. Now this, while it might not look like much, is the first video game ending in history. Yeah, I know, it's just Elliot running around his house, celebrating, while E.T.'s sitting there, and it gives you a few bonus points, and so on. It might not seem like much, but this was the first video game ending ever. Now, video game endings are a standard feature. I've written down a list of comments right here about how bad E.T. supposedly is. Let me just read off a few of these. It caused a video game crash because it was bad. It was so bad it destroyed the life of the Atari 2600. Nearly all who purchased the game returned it. Complaints about the sound effects, that they were so terrible that you don't even know what's going on. That the game had a dull plot and crummy graphics, that it is virtually unplayable, and last of all, that it is the worst Atari game of all time. And you might think, well, it's hard to get out of the holes, right? It's impossible to get out of the holes. All those other videos show that it's hard to get out of the holes. But you know what? If you cannot get out of the holes, you are bad at video games. It's really not that hard to get out of the holes at all. All you do is press and hold the action button, keep it held down until you have cleared the edge of the pit. If you do that, you'll get out every time. Here, let me demonstrate again. Holding down the action button, if I release the action button while part of E.T.'s body is still over the pit, he will fall down again. In fact, goodness, I couldn't even fall in the pit on purpose that time. Let me try it again. Trying to get out of the pit. There we go. I actually fell in the pit on purpose that time. That took some doing, believe it or not. So my message to everyone who says this is a bad game because the pits are so hard to get out of sucks at video games. Let me repeat that. If you cannot get out of the pits in E.T., you suck at video games. I don't mean that as a personal insult. I mean that as more of a challenge, if you will. Now this is something in the game I thought was kind of weird. They have this flower. If you raise your head, the flower will come up. I guess that's a reference to the movie. In part 1 of my video series, I compared and contrasted E.T. with a number of the most popular Atari games of the time, just to give you a feel of what games were like, how good or bad the graphics were, how the sound was, how the gameplay was, but most of all, what the concepts were like. Now, if you haven't seen that, just take a look really quickly at the last few minutes of the video. Take a look at those games. Pull them out and play them if you have them. And ask yourself, were these games really any better than E.T.? Was E.T. really any worse? This game is pretty hard on the difficult mode, actually. Thanks to the FBI agent who steals your phone pieces. The challenge is incredible. I'm not going to say that these games I'm about to show you are bad necessarily. You'll be able to see that for yourselves. But these are some other Atari games that were based on licensed characters, franchises, and trademarks. Here's Dumbo's Flying Circus. This was also one of the few games that had a title screen, but let's take a look at the actual game. You play as Dumbo, you fly around and shoot balloons and clowns. Now, I'm not a big fan of clowns, and I think it's kind of cool that they made a game where you actually get to shoot them. But should Dumbo really be a side-scrolling shooting game? I mean, that's not quite what I thought of when I saw the classic Disney movie about the elephant that learned to fly and won over the hearts of millions. But this is pretty much the whole game. In the more advanced levels, different types of clowns come out. You try to pop the balloons by flying into them, or shoot them with the bullets coming out of your nose. Shoot the clowns. Avoid the colored balloons, and don't touch the clowns, of course. Clowns are bad for you. Alright, this next game, based on a trademark character, makes Dumbo's Flying Circus look awesome. Kool-Aid Man, from Mattel. Yes, they made a game based on the Kool-Aid Man character. I am this Kool-Aid Man pitcher. Yes, this thing I'm moving around is supposed to be the Kool-Aid Man. And I'm trying to fight off the Thirsties, also trademark characters from Kool-Aid commercials, who are trying to drink my Kool-Aid. That's this blue stuff at the bottom. Now, if you bump into anything, it will send you flying around the room. To stop the Thirsties from drinking your Kool-Aid, you simply touch them while they have their straws extended. If they drink all of your Kool-Aid, the game is over. The more Thirsties you defeat, the more points you gain. This is Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, they actually made a video game based on it. Let's take a look. This was an extremely ambitious project for an Atari game. You'll notice there are a couple of different views. One, the map view, where you play as sort of a dot. The other one where you play as the... I'm actually not sure which character you're supposed to be playing as. I never read the instruction manual. That's important. That is an important thing to remember about old video games, is instruction manuals were necessary. Watch out for those birds. Uh-oh. The Dark Rider. Okay, here's another video game based on a popular movie at the time. I don't know if you've ever seen Kroll. It's a cult classic, so watch it.
I wish we always got along, but someone speaks and it's taken wrong. I wish we always got along. You should put me in a song.
Like the movie, there is a sword-wielding hero, and of course his love interest, the girl down there at the bottom, and you fight these guys off trying to get her. Try not to get stabbed in the process. I mean, it was a fantasy adventure movie. I have to say though, this is one hard game. Once the bad guys grab your girl, you ride off on horseback over to the next level, which is just pretty hard in and of itself. You try to jump over these barriers while avoiding that spider thing. So I got up to this door here, make the spider disappear, and it goes on and on. Thanks for watching part 2 of my series of 6 videos of why I love E.T. for the Atari 2600. Make sure to tune in next time for part 3, where I'll be discussing the alleged video game crash of 1983 and all of the implications thereof. So long!